you ever heard somebody really, really, really struggling? And even somebody, if they're watching this and they're really struggling, I know they'll have had this experience. When you look at them and the thought comes to you, you look fine to me. You can hear they're describing something that doesn't make quite the same sense. But to them at that point, in that thought felt reality, that looks totally true.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally true.
You know, I was having suicidal thoughts and feelings at one time when my husband had left me, and that annoyed me because I had been thinking of leaving him. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah, bugger beat you to it.
and then what was really interesting was I kept myself miserable for about 4 years after that, and I knew I was keeping myself miserable, but I was. Even though I had these thoughts, well, you were going to leave him anyway. You know, you were thinking of leaving him, but he left you, and now you're keeping yourself miserable to prove that you actually loved him. You know, that was sort of what was the thought thing that was going on. And there were times when I would sit on the floor, and I was, and I really did have suicidal thoughts. At the same time, I had decided that I was going to make something of this situation. So I would learn to do some things that I'd never, that I'd always wanted to do and that I'd never done in my life. So I joined a sailing club, learned to sail. And there were days when I would go and it was like really rough, and we would sail and I'd be hanging out the side and I'd be in the water more than I was in the boat, and I'd be, and really using lots of energy and having a great time. And then I'd be driving home going, oh, that was a really good day, and wasn't, I had a really lovely time, and I'd think, hang on a minute, I can't be happy because I'm depressed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And
I never did understand that. I mean, it makes sense to me now, but for years I was like, I couldn't be happy and depressed at the same time. How did that work?
I love stories like that. One of the things that just went through my mind when you were chatting there was like, for anybody who's listening and listened to that story, if you imagine that at this point in the recording, we rewound to the start of your story, okay, but we put someone else's interpretation of the events in. So you've got the events that are occurring, and then you've got the story of what's occurring. Now, if you let's say we put that through the filter of one of your parents or a friend or something, then although the events would be the same, the story would potentially look quite different.
Yeah.
Right? But we can't see when it relates to this character called me that it's a story. It's like, well, no, it's not a story. It's my life. I've had people say, what do you mean it's a bloody story? It's my life you're dismissing here. You so-and-so, with your whatever, your nonsense. And, that's my life. It's like, yeah, but that my life is an apparent story of thought about apparent circumstances. There's so little like factual data in there, actually, when you come to if you looked at it like as an analyst or a scientist, it's comical, really.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that you could replay that same sequence of tape as you've described it now, we could wait 10 years, come back, you try and describe the same thing, and I'll bet there's anomalies even in that. There'll be anomalies now from when you described it like close to the time, and we figure all these signals are pointing us to the fact that that this narrative and description isn't quite so concrete as perhaps we thought it was. And that there's like for anyone who's struggling, there's simplicity and beauty in there. Like you said right at the end, well, hang on, if I'm depressed, like, how the hell am I having a great time?
Yeah.
Now somebody will helpfully say, oh, well, that's the nature of depression. It's like, no, hang on. You got to start to see. Remember that clearing process? Is it a light left on? Is it the moon? That's the mind's natural propensity to start clearing this stuff up. But we'll intervene with what we believe to be true and try and impose that. Oh no, that's the nature of depression. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like this. It's like, no, that's the nature of human experience. That's what human experience is like, and it does seem to be quite wavy and different. Friends of mine are very what appears to be calm in the story of them, like actually the more aware of awake I've become, I think it's probably more the other way. It's like, wow, it's even more like, you know, and then it's even more, oh, it's more like the bandwidth is expanded rather than contracted. So it's going to be different for everyone, but because it would be, wouldn't it? Like we've said already on this call, we can sense that there's one thing going on. It's pretty easy to get people to have a sense of that. There's a sense that there's life here. And then there's a sense that there's some kind of character, or, you know, a Dave or some Daveness, or some Anne or Anness going on, right? And I don't want to dismiss either.
No.
So I'm not into absolutism of like, well, it's just one thing, it's only one thing. Well, yeah, it is, right? To a point, that's true. But it isn't experiential. Experiential is two-ness. There's a me, there's a you, there's a life, there's a world, there's separation, you know. But where the separation screws us over is when we think this two-ness lives in here, there's a me to suffer, rather than it's just experience. And even the sense that there's a me to suffer actually isn't the suffering either. So that can be dismissed pretty quickly. So it's this continual, so all these things that we're going through, actually, when I started to realize this, because a lot of my work is around resilience with leaders and teams, and my broader goal of bringing organizational stress to an end, because it's perfectly doable. You know, if I've managed to do it in my life, I'm an example of a human, so it can be done. And there's lots of others. It doesn't mean stress doesn't occur, but the suffering around stress can dissipate because it can. So all these things that are going on that actually we're seeing as problem or whatever, in fact, they can be invitation to see something really quite miraculous about life and about the true spiritual nature of life. You know, not spiritual as you might have like grown up with as a kid and associate with things that you don't particularly enjoy, like church or religion or spiritual movements like that. I'm talking about spirit from the point of view of the energy of life, or the formless nature of life, the lifeness of life itself, not a cliched stereotypical view, just the essence of being, if you like, the energy that stays with all of us, even when, mostly when people think about energy, they think about their potential to do tasks. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the energy of aliveness, the fact that you know you're alive. You ask most people, are you alive? They're going to go, yeah, once they've worked out why you're a weirdo asking the question, you know. Of course I'm alive, you idiot. Otherwise I'd be down, white and stiff. So, you know, so it's that's what I'm talking about, spirit, the aliveness of aliveness, not our energy to do stuff of the unit day to day. So I'm talking before that, before any of this form.
You said you'd had dark feelings about wanting to get out of this altogether.
Mm-hmm.
At that stage. So what stopped you doing that?
I don't know whether I can pinpoint something that stopped me. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't. It was. I think what's more useful is that there's that sense of real desperation. I can remember that. I think the lowest point is when it was around the time when my first son was born. So it's 13 years ago now. So I mean, memory's going to be a bit vague anyway. But I remember I was living in one place and driving around the M25 about 60 miles a day to and from work, and he was a feisty baby and didn't sleep much. I was trying to keep my MBA going at the time. I was only just into my role as a CEO, so there was lots of, you know, circumstantial stuff that would have been weighing on my mind. I seem to need quite a lot of sleep. I'm still much like a baby. When I don't sleep, I really don't function physically particularly well. And there's the euphoria of a new life and all that kind of thing. But of course, you've got an image of how all that should be. And I was tired, like really properly tired, exhausted, really. And I just remember one evening driving home. I only had colic as well as a baby for months. So he would cry like 3-4 hours solid. You know, anybody who's been through that will know what that's like. And I remember coming home from work one evening, getting home about 7 o'clock in the evening, and putting my key in the door and hearing him crying. and just taking the key out the door, jumped in my car and carried on driving. Just drove around for long. I couldn't bear the thought of even going in the house. It was just like it straught too much. So what keeps us going? What had me take the key out the door, got me back in the car, some takeout time. That to me is spirit resilience. That's what's there all the time, like beyond what we think to be true about anything in ourselves. So I guess that's probably a better answer to the question. There was something, or it's as if, what do we say? There's something, or it's as if there's something that says, look, get the key out the door, go and do that, drive around. And I only drove around for like a few minutes, and I felt terrible for doing it. You can imagine, because I knew my wife had been having a hell of a day, whatever. So I knew what I was walking into, and I just didn't feel ready. And then I felt guilty for not supporting all that kind of story. I drove around the block a couple of times, went in and I guess pitched in and helped, and you just get on and do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, like that. So even when you're unblissfully unaware of what's going on, like that innate resilience that's with all of us, is, just keeps you moving. It keeps you moving. I think the good fortune for me was that at some point I ran into somebody who stopped giving me coping mechanisms, ways of dealing with this, all of which just really weren't working, and started to explain to me. And I remember early on I said, I like to know the mechanics of stuff. So you can imagine when I came across the principles, it was like, oh, hang on. This is the mechanics. This isn't engineering. This is the physics of human experience. So I was like a pig in poo, because one, that's the spirit, isn't it? The curiosity that comes through. It's like, well, I want to know about this. This is, and it cleared up for me so many misunderstandings so quickly. And then you see other people suffering out of the same misunderstanding that you had, so it becomes really natural to want to tell them about it.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because even though I said I chose a different thought when I was thinking about ending things, I guess there was something more than that, like you say. It was like. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can promise you, I wasn't in any state to choose.
No.
There was no choosing going on. I mean, it was like being thrown around on a tube train. I mean, I'm not choosing. The only thing you can choose, in a sense, and you don't even choose, is you just grab on. At that point, I was, and the story I was telling myself at the time was, you ungrateful bastard. You've been promoted. You've got a great job. You've got a family. You can afford to provide for them. How that built into the story of what a crap individual I was. It was how dare you feel, and now you've got the audacity, the arrogance to feel bad as well. Like, where do you get off your self-obsession? It was like that, and that was like playing 24/7 in my head. So yeah, any weapon the mind can find, it seems quite happy to throw into the quagmire. And at the time, it's hard to see that that's actually part of the correcting process, because no one's going to sign up for that, because we're primitive creatures, but it's just part of that misunderstanding. But actually, all of those things appear to have got to the point where I had a fortunate conversation some years later where somebody explained it. It was like, and I've had people, have this, listening to interviews and stuff I've done and whatever, just suddenly a realization will occur to them. And it's not around the content of what we're saying. That's important to realize. You can realize at any point. Everyone knows that. Mowing the lawn, in the shower. You don't have to be listening to something that sounds like it knows what's going on. Realization's just there, and people realize something significant, and challenges that have been there for years vanish. And when somebody explained to me about the thought-feeling relationship, there were some big things that were like, oh. And then it started to dawn on me really quickly, even before I'd come across Sydney Banks or anything. So somebody explained it prior to that phase of my understanding. I just started to realize that when people were describing their challenges, they were describing their thinking. They didn't know it was thinking. They thought it was them. And of course, we all do that all day, because that's how the form moves. That's how it moves. But it's useful to know that. You don't have to just sit in silence all the time, and you don't have to find one state called a beautiful feeling all of the time. We're built to live resiliently entire human lives. That's what the system is designed to do. So there's another error. People get relief and a better feeling, and now they go and chase that. That becomes your new poison. Oh, I just need to find a beautiful feeling. Well, unless you put a definition around what is and isn't, being human is a beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
Aliveness is a beautiful feeling. And now that sounds mad if you've got a huge conceptualization, which most people have, around which feelings are okay and which aren't. So now you get into seeking mode. If I just hang out with those people again, I'll get a new beautiful feeling, or a better beautiful feeling. And you're in the same trap, just the same trap, chasing. And there's release in that as well. Like in every moment, it is what it is. It won't always be this clear and this apparent. It'll just be whatever it is in the next moment.
For people who want to get in touch with you, or to talk to you more, to know more about you, how do they find out more about you? Where do they get?
Yeah. I think the best place is Facebook. So that's my most active social media profile. So just Dave Kibby, and I have a website as well, which is more sort of a bit more corporate-y. And it's just almost like a shop window, but it's davekibby.org. But you can send me a message via that if you're interested in, somebody might be interested in what I'm saying and how that can impact them in the workplace, being more at ease with themselves, less on their mind, reduce stress and stuff like that. So I do team training, one-to-one executive coaching, stuff like that. So that's davekibby.org. Facebook, davekibby@gmail.com. Say
and
hi.
YouTube?
Oh yeah. No, the YouTube is going to be growing actually, and that's going to be very much based around awakening, very much. So yeah, that's Dave Kibby. It's an imaginative use of names, but yeah, that's my YouTube channel, Dave Kibby.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, Dave. That's really good.
Pleasure.
Speak to you
Thanks,
again
Anne.
soon.
Talk to you soon. Take care now.